My name is Yao Graham. I'm the coordinator of Third World Network Africa, a long-standing partner of development and peace for more than a decade. What has been done well in Africa in the past decade or so? I think an important achievement has been the decline in conflict and also the greater acceptance of open political systems. This has been important for allowing citizens to have more and more of a presence in the debates about policy choices, in selecting their leaders, and so on and so forth. In economic and social policy, the hitherto overriding faith in the market has been pushed back by the resistance and critique of civil society, as well as the lived experiences of governments. And we have found in recent years more attention to promoting smallholder agriculture, particularly for domestic food production and food security. We have found more attention by governments to public investment in some social areas, particularly health and education. Enrollment has increased in quite a few countries. In Ghana, for example, the National Health Insurance Scheme has improved the access of people to health, although of course there are limitations with the scheme. In Ghana also, public spending by way of school feeding as well as per capita grant for pupils has seen a stabilization of enrollment as well as its expansion. These are very important developments. Across board, we can say that the notion of gender equality has gained more and more as civil society groups have pressed for this. National constitutions, of course, with their recognition for the equality of citizens, has created an important framework for this debate. What are some of the things that, so these are positives that have developed and should be maintained and expanded. Could develop have been done in a different way? I think so. Even though political liberalization has become widely accepted, unfortunately, this by and large remains formal in many ways. Governments retain an authoritarian reflex, which means that their engagement with citizens for a more democratic approach to development, democratic approach to decision making, leaves a lot to be desired, and this is an area where change needs to take place. In the area of extractives, governments have come to some recognition that the extractive sector is not bringing as much return as it was promised, that there are grave environmental and social impacts. They recognize that this needs to shift, as reflected in some regional initiatives in SADC and in ECOWAS, as well as at the African level in the African Mining Vision. But these aspirational declarations are yet to become policy, and it's quite important that we begin to move forward on these very important issues. Even as the framework, even though attacks have been made on the faith in the market, the overriding framework remains a liberal framework for determining policy, and we need some shift in that if the initiatives in different sectors are to be consolidated into a new development model. The shift towards a new development model is key to being able to make progress and to consolidate what has been done. I think that the 2008 global economic crisis has put a finger on the fact that even though growth has taken place across Africa over the past 5 years, even though there has been some drop in poverty, the fundamental limitations imposed on African countries by being raw export commodity dependent countries remains a major challenge, which makes them hostage to the vagaries of the world market as well as a continued dependence on aid. I think that remains a fundamental challenge, as well as refashioning economics, refashioning the political culture to be more democratic. This, I think, are key elements for alternatives. A number of projects and initiatives are taking place across regions which I think need to be consolidated and which can bring about improvements on what have been achieved so far. I talked about the area of extractives. In SADC, in ECOWAS, and the Africa-wide level, initiatives about reform of the extractive sector policy have been initiated. This is extremely important because the new scramble for Africa is driven by interest in the extractive sector. Many African LDCs are dependent on extractives for export earnings. The reform of the extractive sector will be beneficial not only for the countries to gain more revenue, gain more development opportunities, but crucially also, it can only be done if the negative externalities in terms of environmental damage and human rights abuses are taken on board as critical. It could only make sense if the artisanal and small-scale miners who are treated now as outside policy are brought into the tent, and this will make livelihood changes which will affect millions of people, across the continent. The African Commission for Human Rights is taking up the issue of exploring human rights and environmental violations in the extractive sector. This could be an extremely important initiative that could contribute to transforming the policy framework around extractives. Regional integration is gaining a lot of attention. A number of policies have been discussed at the regional and continental level. For example, a common agricultural policy in West Africa has been announced that could have positive implications for smallholders. It has not yet gained traction. It could be very important, going forward. Now, if you look at these examples and the earlier examples I gave about what was happening in social development and health, there clearly are possibilities which could be built upon if taken on board with a redefined role of the market and the state in national economies, and also the improvement of democratic culture. What can D&P do to promote these alternatives and also to support these things going forward? I think already in the D&P portfolio, some of the things being done around Africa contribute to these. But I think it's important to take on board the fact that there's a growing desire by citizens to see that political liberalization is reflected in the influence on economic policy, sectorally and in totality. Many citizens speak about the fact that whilst they have the voice to speak about things, it does not seem to be reflected on what policy choices are made. So civic consciousness, civic influence, how do we unite these in the different areas that we are talking about? And I think that challenge is expressed in the various areas that I've talked about, in education, in health, in extractives. An area like trade has been one area where citizens have shown that they could exert some influence. So the positives from the building of the strength, voice and organization of citizens groups have been shown as areas which make an important contribution all around to their being able to influence policy. The consolidation of civic capacity critically is a foundation for the ability of citizens to influence processes in their various countries.